And trust me, I know more about getting bullied than anyone.
You do? How?
Meg Griffin has learned to expect disappointment. At the dinner table, she carefully chooses her words, hoping to share just a small part of her day. She's barely halfway through a sentence when her father, Peter, leans back, rolls his eyes, and mutters, "Shut up, Meg." The words land like a slap, followed by laughter, not just from her family, but from the audience watching at home. At first, the joke might seem harmless. Every show has its comic relief, its punching bag, but the problem isn't that Meg is laughed at, it's that she's only laughed at. Unlike Peter, whose stupidity is balanced with charm, or Stewie, whose villainy is softened by wit, Meg has no such layers. She exists solely to be ridiculed, making her less of a character and more of a running gag. Before Family Guy turned her into television's most mistreated teenager, Meg had potential. She could have been a relatable character, awkward, struggling with teenage insecurities, but ultimately growing into herself. Instead, the show leans so hard into humiliating her that even when she achieves something, it's immediately undercut by another round of mockery. Does this still count as satire, or has Family Guy inadvertently normalized bullying? This video will explore how Meg's mistreatment evolved, why it fails as effective comedy, and how a better written version of her could have still been funny, without reinforcing the idea that some people exist only to be the punchline.
Sleeping lizards, meatloaf is my favorite!
Scooter, how come we've never met you before?
Shut up, Meg.
The alarm buzzes. Meg sighs, forcing herself out of bed. Another day, another round of insults waiting downstairs. She walks into the kitchen trying to act natural. Maybe today will be different. Maybe today her family will see her. But the moment she speaks, Peter interrupts. Meg, just looking at you is ruining my appetite. Lois smirks, Chris laughs, even Stewie, an infant, somehow finds a way to mock her. This isn't a one-time joke, it's routine, baked into the DNA of the show. But Meg's struggles don't end at home. At school, she's an outcast. When she tries to befriend the popular kids, they use her and toss her aside. When she gets a makeover, the world doesn't admire her transformation, it finds new ways to mock her. Even in episodes where she momentarily gains confidence, like Dial Meg for Murder, where she adopts a hardened persona after jail time, the show immediately strips it away, as if afraid to let her be anything more than a loser. Compare her to Lisa Simpson. Lisa is also an outsider, but she's given victories. She wins contests, stands up for herself, and has meaningful relationships. Butters in South Park might be naive, but he grows. He changes. He gets moments where he's the hero. Meg, she resets to zero every time. If she were a real person, we'd call this abuse. So, is Meg cursed to be miserable, or is it the writer's choice to keep her there? And more importantly, what does it say about the audience that we keep laughing along? It started with a chuckle, then a snort, then a full-blown laugh. The first few times Peter Griffin muttered, "Shut up, Meg," it was unexpected, absurd, and, if we're being honest, pretty funny. But, like a joke repeated one too many times at a party, the humor faded into something else. It stopped being about satire and became background noise, a lazy fallback whenever the show needed an easy punchline. Imagine being the middle child, constantly overlooked, your family forgets your birthday, your achievements go unnoticed, and even the dog gets more attention than you. Family Guy plays on this exaggerated reality, making Meg the ultimate underdog. Someone so ignored that her suffering becomes absurdly humorous. The joke works because it taps into a universal fear, being invisible. In some ways, her character's abuse functions as social commentary. Many sitcoms have a character who's the odd one out. Friends had Ross, The Office had Toby, The Simpsons had Milhouse. Meg represents that archetype but cranked up to an absurd extreme. The joke could have remained effective if it was balanced with moments of redemption, but therein lies the issue. Comedy thrives on surprise, but when the same joke plays out over and over, it no longer subverts expectations, it reinforces them. Imagine if The Office only ever used Michael Scott saying "that's what she said" without giving him deeper moments. It would get old fast. Meg's character arc isn't just stagnant, it's non-existent. Unlike Butters, who goes from gullible sidekick to breakout fan favorite, or Lisa Simpson, who has victories despite her struggles, Meg remains in a loop. No growth, no wins, just the same old joke. The show even acknowledges this problem. In one episode, Meg has a mental breakdown and directly confronts her family for their mistreatment. It's a powerful moment, until it's immediately undone, with the family returning to their same behavior. That could have been a turning point, but Family Guy refuses to let Meg evolve. Meg remains the girl in the corner, forgotten even by the writers. Her suffering isn't a stepping stone for growth, it's a rut. And when the audience realizes that, the joke stops being funny. Imagine waking up every morning knowing that no matter what you do, you'll be the butt of the joke. You try to speak only to be drowned out by laughter, not because of what you said, but because you said anything at all. For Meg Griffin, this isn't an exaggeration, it's her everyday life. And while Family Guy plays her suffering for laughs, the consequences of this storytelling choice go beyond just one animated sitcom. To truly understand the impact, we need to examine how repeated public humiliation affects identity, audience perception, and the broader media landscape. Psychologists call it learned helplessness, the idea that when someone is constantly dismissed, mocked, and degraded, they stop fighting back. But here's the crucial part. Meg isn't just mocked occasionally, her mistreatment is a narrative constant. If Family Guy were a reality show, Meg would be that contestant who is always edited to be the fool, no matter what she does. If she wins, the edit makes it look like an accident. If she loses, it's framed as her inevitable fate. The writers never let her win, not because of satire, but because they see her suffering as the joke itself. This pattern, explored in earlier sections, is what differentiates Meg from other comedic outcasts like Lisa Simpson or Butters, who at least have moments of triumph. Satire works best when it punches up, not down. The best comedies hold a mirror to society, making us uncomfortable for the right reasons, forcing us to question power structures, biases, and real-life hypocrisy.
And I'll pleasure myself to your photos.
Me too!
Me too!
Ah, God, Meg, that's sick! That's your mother!
I'm just trying to fit in.
Get out! Get out of this house! I said no!
Now, ask yourself, what is Family Guy making us question when it mocks Meg? Are we laughing because we recognize some truth in her struggles, or are we just conditioned to expect her suffering? Great satire, like The Office or BoJack Horseman, takes flawed characters and gives them depth. We cringe when Michael Scott embarrasses himself because deep down, we see his insecurity. We sympathize with BoJack's self-destructive tendencies because they are rooted in something real. With Meg, there's no nuance, no subversion, no what if that makes us think differently. Her misery is a fixed punchline never explored beyond the surface. And as previously discussed, repetition diminishes humor over time, eventually turning what was once satire into normalized cruelty. Here's where it gets dangerous. Studies show that when audiences see endless humiliation played for laughs, they become less empathetic to real suffering. It's the same phenomenon that happens with reality TV. When someone is framed as a walking joke, we stop seeing them as a person. This kind of storytelling has real-world consequences. Consider how social media turns certain people into memes, reducing their entire existence into a single embarrassing moment. We laugh, we share, and before we know it, someone's real-life pain becomes entertainment. Meg is fictional, but her role in Family Guy follows the same formula. Her pain is expected, so no one questions it. The show doesn't challenge us to think differently, it asks us to laugh and move on, much like the way audiences have been conditioned to overlook the emotional impact of repeated public shaming online and in real life. Every comedy needs a punching bag, but what happens when a character is only a punching bag? What happens when the audience isn't asked to reflect, but simply to enjoy the cruelty? This isn't just about Meg, it's about how media shapes our perception of who deserves respect. If someone is mocked enough times, people stop questioning whether they ever deserved dignity in the first place. But could Family Guy have done this differently? Could the show still be funny without making Meg's suffering inevitable? Imagine a Family Guy where Meg Griffin isn't the family-designated punching bag, but the unexpected comedic powerhouse. What if she were self-aware, turning their insults back on them? Picture this. The family is up to their usual chaos, maybe accidentally summoning a demon or turning their house into a roller disco. Meg walks in, surveys the madness, and deadpans, normal people don't live like this. Silence. Wait, is Meg right? Lois whispers. Peter shudders. Shut up, Meg. But this time, there's fear in his voice. Instead of making her the easiest target, Family Guy could have made Meg the smartest person in the room, the one who sees the absurdity of her family. Imagine if she ran a secret viral account, exposing the Griffins' nonsense. Peter's wisdom becomes a meme, Lois's passive-aggressiveness trends, and Stewie's schemes fuel conspiracy theories. Suddenly, Meg isn't just a victim, she's the one controlling the joke. What if Meg actually left? The Griffins assume they don't need her, but their world unravels. Peter loses his punching bag, Chris starts talking to furniture, even Stewie admits we miss telling her how irrelevant she is. Without Meg, their dysfunction has no direction. Great comedy thrives on contrast. If a character always loses, their failures stop being funny. Imagine if Friends had Joey say, "How you doing?" every other line. Eventually, Chandler would just stare at the camera and say, "We're not." That's what happened with Meg. The solution? Let her win sometimes. Not enough to change the show's dynamic, but enough to make her inevitable losses funnier. Meg didn't need to be lovable, just better written. Family Guy could have made her the ironic voice of reason, but instead they recycled the same joke for 20 years. Had she been given the smallest evolution, sarcasm, an occasional triumph, a self-aware roasting of her own family, her suffering could have actually been, well, funnier. Instead we got, "Shut up, Meg." And maybe it's time Family Guy shuts up too.
The other family we've chosen has 3 daughters, so we're picking you because you have 3 sons.
But I'm not.
Shut up, Greg.
Comedy can expose truths or reinforce cruelty. Family Guy's treatment of Meg isn't satire, it's repetition masquerading as humor. Great comedy punches up, challenging power and norms. South Park mocks authority. The Simpsons critiques society, but Family Guy simply ridicules Meg because it's easy. Psychologists call it learned helplessness, when repeated humiliation convinces someone they deserve it. Meg's role isn't just that of the outcast, she's conditioned to accept failure. Unlike Lisa Simpson or Butters, who evolve beyond their struggles, Meg is stuck in a joke that never changes. Repetition in comedy works when it escalates or subverts expectations, but "Shut up, Meg" never changes. Imagine a magician pulling the same rabbit out of a hat for 20 years. The trick stops being impressive. It becomes mindless routine. Meg's suffering isn't satire, it's static noise. The real question is, are we laughing at Meg or with her? Satire should reveal something about the world, but when a character is ridiculed just for existing, the joke stops being commentary and becomes a reflection of real-world bullying. People stop questioning why Meg is treated this way, just as some people in real life are conditioned to expect mistreatment. Family Guy has evolved its other characters. Stewie is more than an evil baby. Quagmire, once a one-note joke, has gained depth, but Meg, she's still the same. Even when she calls out her family's cruelty, the show resets. Her suffering isn't just part of the joke, it is the joke. At its best, Family Guy pushes boundaries. At its worst, it falls back on cheap, repetitive jokes. Meg Griffin could have been a sharp, ironic voice, the one person in Quahog who sees the absurdity of it all. Instead, she's locked in an endless cycle of humiliation. And when a joke never changes, it stops being funny. 20 years later, she's still sitting there, still trying, still unheard. While other Family Guy characters evolved, Meg remained trapped in a loop, mocked, dismissed, and denied even a flicker of development. What started as a simple gag became something stranger, a joke that refused to change, even as the show itself moved forward. Comedy reflects the times. The Simpsons let its outcasts grow. Milhouse gets moments of triumph, Lisa is allowed depth, South Park turned Butters into a fan favorite, shifting him from punchline to protagonist. Even Family Guy modernized some of its humor. Stewie outgrew his evil baby persona, and Quagmire became more than just a sleazy neighbor. But Meg, she stayed the same. Today's audiences expect humor with layers. Shows like The Good Place and BoJack Horseman prove that comedy isn't just about the joke, it's about what the joke means. If Family Guy ever decided to let Meg acknowledge her own absurdity or flip the script on her family, she could become something more than just the designated loser. Meg's character is a reminder that comedy without change becomes static, and jokes without growth lose their bite. Maybe after 20 years of "Shut up, Meg," it's time for a new punchline. Because if Family Guy refuses to evolve, maybe it's Family Guy that audiences will stop laughing at.